As I drove towards my childhood home, each mile felt like a tether binding me to a past I both feared and loathed. The day of the family gathering had arrived, and a wave of anxiety washed over me, overwhelming my senses. Pulling into the familiar driveway, I was greeted by the sight of the house, its walls steeped in echoes of neglect and unfulfilled expectations. A combination of apprehension and nostalgia twisted in my stomach. The moment I stepped through the door, the scent of my mother's perfume engulfed me, a bittersweet reminder of the expectations attached to her presence, a complex mix of love and control. The living room looked the same, filled with photographs of my younger siblings' accomplishments, each captured smile contrasting sharply with my self-doubt. In the background, the sounds of laughter and chatter formed a cacophony that made me feel like an outsider, a ghost drifting through a world where everyone else thrived. I recalled countless moments from my childhood, often feeling invisible, overshadowed by the accolades heaped upon my siblings. It was a familiar role, the overlooked daughter striving for approval, but receiving only emotional neglect, and the haunting refrain, "Why can't you be more like them?" Each laugh felt like a reminder of my inadequacies. Yet, in those turbulent emotions, a thought emerged, gleaned from Jungian concepts I had recently explored in therapy. The shadow archetype, a representation of the parts of myself I tended to hide or deny, began to surface amidst my anxieties. Perhaps this gathering, to which I had been dreading attending, could instead serve as an opportunity for transformation. In the depths of my pain, I found the strength to transform my legacy. That phrase echoed in my mind, a reminder that within this cycle of emotional neglect, there might be a chance for healing, for both myself and my family. Could I shift from being the silent observer to someone who could confront and illuminate the shadows we shared? As I watched my family's interactions unfold before me, I noticed the unhealed wounds and unexpressed feelings that lingered within us all. The laughter often masked deeper emotions. Critiques disguised as humor only fueled our collective pain. Yet, in those moments, I felt a flicker of hope. I recognized that my pain did not exclude me from love. It might even pave the way for deeper understanding. Could I find my voice amid this emotional storm? As I took a steadying breath, I felt a sense of resolve beginning to build within me. This time, I wasn't merely stepping into my past. I was walking toward a new beginning, ready to address the silent shadows that had long dictated our family narrative. In doing so, perhaps I could forge a path of healing for us all. As I stood amidst my family, the cacophony of voices faded, and I found myself retracing the painful pathways of memory. Vivid images swirled in my mind, moments of joy intertwined with shadowy recollections of neglect and inadequacy. I sought solace amid the noise, but I could hear the echoes of my childhood spinning around me like a broken record, each crack repeating the same haunting refrain. Why can't you be more like them? In childhood, feeling invisible was ingrained in me. My younger brother's accolades overshadowed every effort I made. In my childhood eyes, those moments screamed my worthlessness. I can still picture that day at school when achievement was celebrated, applause thundered for my sibling while I stood by, clapping in a daze. The warmth of their recognition chilled my spirit. It became painfully clear that love in our family was a currency exchanged for performance, leaving me desperately yearning for the affection and validation that always slipped through my fingers. In this family construct, I adopted the role of the underachiever as my truth. As my father's dismissive comments echoed in my heart, and my mother's critical gaze lingered on my perceived shortcomings, I internalized the message. I was too much, yet never enough. Each critique and unfulfilled expectation carved deeper grooves in my psyche, shaping my identity around inadequacy and fear of rejection. Moments of solitude became my refuge as I sought to express the turmoil brewing within me. Locked away in my room, my journal became a sanctuary, pages filled with my inner struggles. Yeasts of sorrow and frustration fermented into scribbles that revealed my overwhelming desire for genuine connection, a cry for validation crying out from the depths of my being. Even in those vulnerable moments, fear held me captive. Daring to share my authentic voice felt like climbing a mountain of insecurity. Contradictions surrounded me in those family outings. I was entrapped in the cycle of projected perfection while feeling emphatically ordinary. I wished to shout, "Notice me. I'm here." But my voice was a whisper caught in a cavernous space, echoing my thoughts, reverberating only self-doubt. To be sensitive was to be weak in their eyes, and despite my efforts to mask the fullness of my feelings, I remained acutely aware of the distance between me and my family. Those formative years taught me to construct a facade, my own persona, to navigate the family's expectations. This mask allowed me to float through social encounters as feelings of inadequacy churned beneath the surface. My silent methodology reflected an understanding. I had learned to blend in, to remain the quiet one, the external observer watching my family's dynamics unfold, while longing for a deeper connection. Gradually, though, those moments began to morph into deeper awareness. As I recognized these foundational beliefs that had warped my perception of self, I knew the need to confront my inner child, my younger self who shared dreams but was often muted by fear. There, she was, a small, light-filled figure surrounded by shadows, searching for acceptance while feeling alienated. In this moment of reflection, I realized the narrative I'd been repeating wasn't absolute. It was shaken, a vision of possibility illuminated by the teachings I had embraced from Jung. Standing here now among my family, I understood that the thread of my pain could weave a tapestry of healing. I could redefine the story. The question nagged gently at my brain. What if I chose to embrace all parts of myself, including my shadow? I could learn to recognize how these limiting beliefs shaped my interactions and decisions. Pain didn't have to be my prison, but rather a bridge to understanding, a source of compassion that could connect me with my family. Through this lens of awareness, it became evident that I was both the bearer of pain and the architect of change. It was all anchored in the understanding that I didn't need to live in the shadows of their standards any longer. An internal transformation was possible. The seeds of change had been sown in the deep recess of my heart. As I prepared to navigate this complicated evening, I felt a flicker of hope, an ember sparked within me towards agency and transformation. The time was ripe for change, a conscious decision to rewrite my narrative. I would learn to voice my true feelings, not just for me but as a shared experience with my family, breaking down the walls that our unsaid emotions had built over the years. And so I steeled my resolve, ready to embark on a journey that would perhaps let love flow more freely between us, illuminating the shadows that had long defined our interactions. The path to healing stretched before me, guiding me away from the cycles of pain and towards a legacy I desired for both myself and my family, a legacy steeped in authenticity, connection, and ultimately, love. As the evening progressed, the warmth of family camaraderie enveloped me. Yet within that cozy atmosphere lay a tempest swirling in my heart. I recognized that this gathering could be the catalyst for my transformation, the moment I would embrace not just my identity, but also the untold stories lurking in the shadows of my family's history. Earlier in therapy, I had explored Jung's concept of the shadow, that part of myself that held fears and unacknowledged emotions. Jung had illuminated a powerful truth. Embracing our shadows could lead to profound personal growth and healing. Now I began to see how this concept applied to my family dynamic. It was a distorted mirror of unspoken emotions, reflecting the walls we had built around ourselves, keeping us apart instead of together. What if I could shift the narrative that defined my role as the invisible one? What if, instead of laughing off the deeper truths, I could acknowledge our fears collectively? This realization sparked something deep within me. In that moment, the familiar pang of anxiety transformed into a flicker of hope, a possibility for healing rather than retreating into old patterns. Suddenly, my brother's light-hearted recounting of a childhood camping trip hit me amidst the laughter. Sophia thought she could catch a fish, even though she was terrified of water, he joked, eliciting chuckles from around the table. The laughter felt bittersweet as I recalled the uncomfortable truth behind my attempt to prove myself against my fears. That day echoed with the same sentiment I felt today, my efforts often overshadowed by others' acclaim. Sensing my moment, I gathered my courage and decided to speak. You know, those moments were hard for me, I said, feeling the table's attention shift. Every time you both received praise, I was there, wishing to be seen for who I really am. A hush fell as they processed my words, surprise mingling with an initial uncertainty. The laughter faded, replaced by a poignant understanding. Perhaps they too felt the weight of unspoken emotions. In that charged silence, I pressed on, inspired by the teachings I had internalized. Mom, Dad, I want you to understand that while I'm passionate about my work as a social worker, it can feel overwhelming. I often feel I'm not enough. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the flood of vulnerability. I'm trying to find what success means for me, rather than just seeking your approval. As I spoke, I could see the shock shifting into something more profound, a moment of contemplation. To share my voice, my fears with all of you was frightening, but I'm learning the importance of confronting our shadows together. It's time we let those unexpressed feelings flow instead of suffocating them under the guise of anger or jokes. I saw my mother's interest peaking, her expression softening. My father leaned in slightly, his usual stoic demeanor loosening as curiosity shone through. This was the moment, a juncture where I could shift our family narrative. I want to explore these uncomfortable emotions, to find a way to connect. We don't have to remain trapped in these roles. Hope surged within me as I felt the air thickening with possibility. Perhaps this was not a solitary journey. I was inviting them to untangle their narratives alongside mine. Let's carve out space to capture our emotions, to confront what we've avoided for so long. Together we can break down these walls that have kept us apart. As I spoke, I felt the barriers we had built begin to sway, their presence both daunting and liberating. There was power in shared vulnerability, an opportunity to weave compassion into the fabric of our family history. I envisioned a future where our shadows no longer dictated our bonds, but instead informed our approaches to love and identity. In that moment of authenticity, I came to realize that our shadows didn't have to define us. They could guide us toward healing. I was still afraid, but I felt empowered, ready to tackle the challenges ahead. We no longer needed to be shrouded in unacknowledged pain, but could turn that pain into a legacy that embraced the full spectrum of our experiences. As the conversation shifted towards understanding and reflection, the laughter transformed from surface-level exchanges to heartfelt shares. My heart swelled as possibilities danced in the air, projecting a new legacy, one where emotional truths could thrive. With newfound conviction, I understood that we were all invited to collaborate in crafting a narrative filled with authenticity and love, one thread at a time. As I looked around the room, gazing into the eyes of my family, I felt the promise of a healthier future. We were on the brink of an awakening, ready to redefine our paths while honoring the depth of our shared stories. And perhaps, through this collective journey, we would forge an unbreakable bond within, the authenticity of our fully realized selves. A legacy worth embracing, one characterized by love, understanding, and the transformative power of facing our shadows together. In the weeks that followed our pivotal family gathering, a palpable shift took place in our home. The air was thick with possibility, each member now striving to confront their shadows and share the unspoken burdens we'd carried. The laughter that once masked deeper emotions now held a weightier significance. Every smile intertwined with an awareness that we were embarking on a crucial journey together. I found myself drawn back to my journals, which had become a sanctuary of sorts. These pages bore witness to my struggles, triumphs, and the myriad emotions I had faced. As I spilled my thoughts onto the paper, I began to weave a narrative not just of sorrow, but of healing. Each entry allowed me to map out the tangled web of my past, piecing together not just my experiences, but those of my family as well. The more I wrote, the more the patterns emerged. A recurring theme from my youth was the haunting question, why can't you be more like your brother? Those words had embedded themselves in my consciousness, shaping my beliefs and distorting my sense of self. I had grown up equating worth with achievement, pushing myself to strive for perfection to feel accepted. The acknowledgement of this complex was both painful and liberating. It meant I was ready to move forward and confront the underlying issues. In therapy, I engaged in deep dialogue with my inner child, the version of me that longed for approval, yet felt invisible amidst my siblings' accomplishments. With each session, I felt stronger, allowing myself to express not just the depth of my pain, but also the love I had for myself that had been buried beneath years of striving for validation. "I see you," I wrote one day, "and you are more than enough. You deserve love simply for being you, not just for what you achieve." Realizing this helped me understand that my perfectionism stemmed from fear, not just fear of failure, but the fear of rejection and inadequacy. This awareness ignited a flame within me. If I could confront my fears, perhaps my family could do the same. At our next family gathering, I felt the anticipation bubble under my skin. Sitting around the familiar table, all of us engaged in small talk, I knew it was time to dive deeper. "May I share something important with you all?" I initiated, feeling the collective energy shift as I spoke. The room, once filled with light laughter, quieted, eyes focusing on me, holding both curiosity and concern. Taking a deep breath, I ventured further. "I want to talk about our family expectations and how they have deeply affected me. It's important that we share how we really feel." I saw the tentative nods of understanding around the table. Growing up, I felt like I had to earn your love through my achievements. Every time I heard, "Why can't you be more like him?" it built a wall between us, making me feel like I had to wear a mask, constantly fighting for validation. As each word hung in the air, I noticed the vulnerability in my parents' eyes. My mother, ever the caretaker, released a shaken breath. "Sophia, we never intended for you to feel unloved. We thought we were guiding you." Their acknowledgement felt like a soothing balm to the wounds etched into my spirit. Encouraged, I pressed on. "I want to embrace who we are as a family, shadows and all. We need to acknowledge that our imperfections don't define us. They guide us toward growth. My perfectionism has perpetuated a cycle of pain, and I want to break free from that." In the ensuing silence, I felt my father's resolve strengthen. "Sophia, you've opened our eyes tonight," he said slowly. "We do need to talk more openly as a family, to explore what we've all been feeling." His words rang with sincerity, creating an intimate space where understanding could flourish. With each story shared that evening, each confession laden with regret, fear, and hope, we began dismantling the barriers that had kept us apart. The dialogue transformed the atmosphere from apprehension to the warmth of compassion, a revelation that we were not alone in our struggles. Each moment we embraced openness brought us closer to healing, allowing shadows to fade into a backdrop of narratives woven with love and authenticity. Moments of laughter and tears intertwined as we each shared our journeys, revealing shadows that had once seemed insurmountable. Each story, filled with fear and longing, echoed the fundamental truths of our collective experience, moments of joy lost in the pursuit of unattainable standards, and love distorted by the weight of expectations. By confronting our shared experiences, we made a conscious decision to embrace authenticity. Moving forward, I proposed, let's commit to taking our conversations deeper, to transform our relationship into one based on genuine understanding, rather than misconceptions of perfection. My family's nods reinforced our collective dedication to this new narrative. As I gazed around the table, I recognized the power in our shared vulnerability. Together, we were shifting not just our individual stories, but also the narrative legacy of our family. As time passed, the gathering space became sacred, a hub of emotional acknowledgement and support. We found comfort in weekly family meetings, where we articulated our fears, celebrated our victories, and even grieved our losses. These moments of honesty transformed how we interacted. The shadows that once loomed large now served only as guides, reminding us of the paths we had traveled and illuminating the way toward healing. The commitment to share openly began to intrude upon the games of perfection we had played for so long. We were learning to embrace the richness of our complexity and to stand shoulder to shoulder while facing life's challenges. Connections deepened and empathy flourished as we discovered there was strength in our collective vulnerability, a necessary component in crafting not just a healthier family, but also a brighter future. With every gathering, I felt the legacy we were building solidify. A legacy driven by love, authenticity, and courage in the face of our shadows. I realized that this journey was not merely about addressing individual pain, but constructing a familial bond that would nourish us all. We embraced our stories, intricately woven together with the threads of our experiences. With determination, we stepped forward as a family. The burdens of the past were not forgotten, but transformed into a foundation upon which we could build resilience. Our hearts opened, recognizing that true love lies in understanding and acceptance of who we are, at our core. Together, we ventured into uncharted territory, knowing that while the road ahead would have its challenges, facing them together would yield a bounty of love and healing. The legacy of our family now glimmered with the promise of a brighter horizon, where love flourished among our fears, and our shadows became the guiding lamps illuminating the path to transformation. As the months rolled on, our family meetings became a cherished ritual, an oasis where honesty flowed, freely, nurturing a deeper understanding of one another. Each gathering marked a turning point, not just in how we interacted, but in the essence of our relationships. I began to sense a profound change in the air, a shift toward authenticity, where vulnerability was celebrated rather than feared. One evening, as we gathered around the worn table, I prepared myself for an even deeper conversation. This time, I felt an urgent need to solidify the commitments we had made to each other. With the smell of my mother's freshly baked bread wafting through the air, I felt the same foundation we had been building start to strengthen. Tonight, I think we should talk about what we want our family legacy to look like moving forward, I suggested, excitement mixed with nervousness coursing through me. What do you mean? My brother asked, curiosity evident. I envision it as a reflection of us, not just of our achievements, but of our capacity for empathy, resilience, and authenticity. A legacy where imperfections are seen not as flaws, but as integral parts of our stories that shape who we are. As I spoke, I looked around the room and saw various expressions reflecting skepticism, intrigue, and eager anticipation. The nods of encouragement from my parents fueled my resolve. We've done so much work to confront our shadows, but now we need to commit to an intentional way of being together. I could feel a warmth begin to rise in the room, a shared understanding that we were at the precipice of something significant. What if we articulated our values as a family? What do we want to embrace as we move forward? My father leaned forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I think we need to lead with love. We need to prioritize kindness, compassion, and understanding. We cannot let our past shadows dictate our future. Yes, I exclaimed, feeling invigorated. What about growth? I think recognizing that we will stumble again, and that's okay, is crucial. We want to create a safe space for each other when we falter, not a place laden with judgment or shame. Trust is another core value, my mother chimed in. If we can trust that our feelings will be heard and respected, then we can foster intimacy. We need to commit to this openness. The excitement was palpable as we scribbled our ideas down on a large piece of paper, a tangible creation of our intentions. Each family member contributed and, slowly, our words transformed into a guiding document that articulated who we were and what we aspired to be. Every family has its quirks and trials, I reflected, but if we lean into those imperfections, they'll add depth to our story. We must remind ourselves that embracing these quirks doesn't lessen our love for one another. As we shared laughter, our fears dissipated, replaced by a sense of purpose. I felt inspired as I witnessed my family reclaim their authenticity, unveiling themselves in ways that had long been lain dormant. Yet, as the conversation deepened, trepidation flickered in the corners of my mind. But how do we hold ourselves accountable? I asked, the weight of the question settling heavily. What if we slip back into old patterns? What safety nets can we put in place? We contemplated this question, realizing it would require ongoing commitment. My father proposed we create a monthly check-in, a dedicated space where we could gauge how we felt about our established values and address any grievances. It's vital that we stay flexible in our approach, evolving as we grow, he said, and I could see a glimmer of wisdom in his eyes. "Can we also incorporate a practice of gratitude?" my mother suggested thoughtfully. "We could take turns appreciating one another during our gatherings, acknowledge how we are living our values." "Yes," I echoed, brought back to the moment's energy. "Let's honor each other's growth, while also recognizing how we influence one another. That acknowledgement will empower us to embody the changes we wish to see." As we reached the end of our evening, I felt something transformative unfurling within me. The commitment to authenticity wasn't merely about holding conversations. It was a lifestyle shift that demanded courage, compassion, and a willingness to be vulnerable. In the days that followed, we began to incorporate these values into our lives actively. Each family meeting resonated with a sense of community as we shared our experiences navigating the delicate balance between vulnerability and growth. No longer was I afraid of being seen as imperfect. Instead, I embraced the idea that together, we could navigate the challenges of life, embodying the authenticity that we had pledged to cultivate. Forgotten hurts began to heal, and the heaviness of past grievances turned into moments of clarity. One evening, we all sat down to discuss a recent disagreement that had nearly disrupted the peace we'd worked so hard to create. Rather than gloss over our frustrations, we opened the door to dialogue. "I felt unheard during that conflict," I voiced, leaning into my discomfort. My brother responded, "I understand. I wanted to be right and didn't listen. I'm sorry for dismissing your feelings." The exchange opened a pathway to deeper conversations. Our disagreements became opportunities to reinforce our shared commitment to our values, allowing us to build trust and mutual respect. In those moments, I realized how commitment to authenticity was not a one-time proclamation, but an ongoing practice that would guide us through the complexities of life. It required vigilance and understanding, alongside the willingness to navigate uncomfortable conversations in search of deeper connection. As our journey progressed, it blossomed into a family where love flourished amidst the fears we once faced. We channeled our energies into a shared mission to uplift each other, appreciate our individuality, and cultivate a legacy marked by understanding and compassion. I could genuinely feel the weight of our past lifting, and brighter horizons loomed ahead. Our family, now a resilient tapestry woven from shared stories, laughter, and vulnerability, blossomed into an entity guided by love, patience, and respect. This journey toward authenticity was a shared commitment to forge a legacy that embraced our shadows and heralded the light, a narrative where love transcended imperfection, reinforcing our connection and guiding us home. Together, we stepped into a new chapter where honoring our past transformed into a shared vision for our future, a future brightly lit with the promise of love, understanding, and the legacy of truly knowing and accepting one another. As the months unfolded, our family's commitment to authenticity solidified into a transformative practice. Each gathering became a sacred space for honesty, where sharing vulnerabilities nurtured deeper connections among us. I was learning that healing was not merely a destination. It was an ongoing journey that required courage and intentionality. One evening, as my family gathered around the dining table, the scent of my mother's famous lasagna wafted through the air, sparking nostalgia and warmth. With a buzz of excitement, I suggested a new practice for our meetings. Let's each share our intentions for how we can support one another. This would not only reaffirm our commitments, but also deepen our connections. My brother was the first to speak. "I want to strive to be a better listener. Sometimes I find myself jumping in before others have finished speaking," he admitted, humility evident in his tone. My mother followed him, her voice filled with sincerity. "I aim to practice patience, giving you all the time and space to express yourselves without interruption. I've realized I don't need to rush to solve every problem." Their words filled the space with warmth and appreciation. I looked around the table, encouraging my father to share his thoughts. "For me, I want to be more honest about my feelings," he stated. "I've recognized that bottling things up only puts distance between us." As each person spoke, I felt the atmosphere shift towards a more profound sense of community. It was no longer just about individual commitments. It was about how we would collectively support each other. Our intentions were more than just words. They were vows to create an environment where we could openly embrace our complexities. One commitment stood out to me: my brother's determination to cultivate a safe space for addressing conflicts. I want to ensure we always have the courage to tackle tough conversations. I believe in growth, and that happens when we engage, even when it is uncomfortable. His vulnerability inspired a wave of understanding among us. We were not only speaking intentions, but also fortifying our shared commitment to growth. It became clear that our discussions would require accountability, a catalyst for true transformation. Moving forward, the monthly check-ins became a cornerstone of our family dynamics. Each meeting fostered an environment where we could openly discuss our highlights and challenges. I could see examples of how our intentions unfolded into daily actions, proving that our commitment to authenticity was practical and actionable. One Saturday evening, my brother shared his struggles at work. "I've been feeling overwhelmed and unappreciated," he confessed. "I've found myself retreating and wanting to prove I'm competent rather than being vulnerable." In that moment, I felt the collective empathy radiating from the table. "You don't have to prove anything to us," I assured him. "You are enough just as you are." This showcased the growth we were experiencing. It was liberating to hear and acknowledge each other's fears openly. Conversations like these transformed our relationship from one rooted in avoidance to one shaped by support and understanding. In noting these shifts, another family member spoke up, sharing how they had faced moments of insecurity, but had felt supported by the reassurance we built together. "Thank you all for showing me that it's okay to be vulnerable," my mother said one evening, her voice filled with emotion. "It's been a long time since I felt this level of connection with you all." The vulnerability I witnessed in our family became a bridge to deeper healing. We were embodying our shared values, creating a legacy built upon trust and love. As the months flowed into one another, I also found myself applying these lessons beyond our family dynamic. In my work as a social worker, I noticed a shift in how I interacted with clients. Understanding the transformative power of saying, "I see you," I began inviting individuals to share their stories without apprehension. These conversations were often cathartic, allowing others to express their fears in a safe space. I found that the more I embraced authenticity within my work, the more I could guide others toward healing. Our family practices bled into my professional life, affirming that vulnerability can lead to profound growth. With each family meeting, we continued to weave a strong tapestry of shared stories and experiences. Past grievances, once heavy chains, began to dissolve into gentle threads that bound us together. I could sense the weight of our unresolved issues lift, replaced by a sense of belonging and unity. In one transformative moment, I facilitated an exercise where each family member wrote a letter expressing gratitude to another. "Let's take turns reading these aloud. It's crucial to recognize how much we mean to one another," I proposed. The evening resonated with warmth as we took turns, expressing appreciation. "I'm grateful for your kindness. It inspires me to be better," my mother read, tears glistening in her eyes, as we all filled the room with heartfelt acknowledgments. Each word knit our hearts closer together, reinforcing the bonds of understanding we had cultivated. As trust grew within our enclave, I felt a sense of freedom flowering. It became evident that we had embarked on a journey that illuminated the path ahead. The shadows we once feared transformed into guides that revealed what it meant to love fully and authentically. Together, we forged ahead into uncharted territory. The bravery we practiced became the foundation of an enduring legacy, a legacy built on love, understanding, and the transformative power of open-heartedness. Each family meeting, every intention, every challenge resolved, brought us closer to the promise of becoming a family anchored in compassion. Now, when reflecting on our journey, I realized our commitment to authenticity was no longer a simple promise, but a lifestyle of resilience and growth. We were continually weaving a narrative of unwavering support and love, honoring our stories and emerging into a shared vision of who we aspired to be. In the quiet moments after these gatherings, I would often reflect on the journey, the laughter, the tears, the understanding. I realized that we were not merely navigating our pasts. We were actively constructing a future where emotional truths reignited the light of our family bond. Now, with each story told, each fear expressed, and each tear shed, we solidified our legacy, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of our shared experiences, illuminating a path toward healing and love. Together, we were embracing our identities, knowing that within the family, we had created a nurturing space where we could thrive in our authenticity, forever transforming pain into a beautiful legacy of connection. As the months passed, our family's commitment to authenticity blossomed into a vibrant practice that anchored us in profound connection. Each gathering became a sanctuary, a space where vulnerability transformed fear into solidarity. We were no longer just navigating our relationships. We were intentionally building a legacy of love and understanding. One evening, inspired by our shared journey, I proposed an idea that had been bubbling within me. Let's create a family vision board. It will reflect our values and aspirations moving forward. The enthusiasm in the room was palpable as we gathered magazines, scissors, and markers, ready to explore our collective intentions. As we crafted our vision board, discussions flowed effortlessly. My brother held up a picture of intertwined trees, saying, "This symbolizes our growth together. It's about strong roots and branches that support each other." Each image cut and pasted reinforced our commitment to nurturing one another in our individual journeys. My mother contributed as well, choosing a flower to represent kindness. "It's about allowing ourselves to bloom in a supportive environment," she said. The conversation swirled around the ideas of love, trust, and compassion, building a visual representation of our united aspirations. The completed board stood proudly in our living room, a constant reminder of our commitment to one another. Whenever challenges arose, we could look at it and feel reconnected to our shared intentions, harmonizing our individual paths with our family values. These new rituals fortified our commitment to each other and encouraged growth in our everyday lives. I was learning that our journey was about so much more than mere words. It was about active engagement and accountability. Our monthly check-ins became essential. We shared our highlights and challenges, celebrating victories and openly discussing our fears. One particular evening, my brother voiced his frustrations at work. "I feel overwhelmed and unappreciated," he admitted, vulnerability evident in his tone. I leaned in, compassion fueling my voice. "You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. You are already enough." The atmosphere shifted with empathy, affirming that our commitment to openness allowed us to address concerns as a family, rather than retreating into silence. With each shared story, I felt us strengthening our bonds. Conflicts transformed from sources of tension into opportunities for deeper connection. One evening, a disagreement arose about vacation plans. Instead of allowing it to spiral into conflict, we paused and reminded ourselves of our shared intentions, promoting open dialogue. "I feel unheard," my brother articulated. "I want our opinions to be valued." In that moment of honesty, we took the time to listen and empathize, recognizing each person's feelings. This practice of patience and understanding was a cornerstone of our journey, the realization that no voice was more important than another. The commitment to these values soon extended beyond our family gatherings. As I interacted with clients at work, I noticed compelling parallels in my practice. I invited my clients to share their struggles and triumphs, creating space for vulnerability. Their stories reflected parts of my own journey, reaffirming the notion that healing occurs within connections. Our family's growth inspired me to approach my work with a renewed sense of purpose. Every conversation facilitated healing, both for them and for myself. Through the framework of authenticity and understanding, I could guide others toward their own transformations. Reflecting on this evolution filled me with gratitude. We had cultivated not only a supportive family unit, but also a thriving connection with the world beyond. An atmosphere of love and acceptance permeated our interactions, not just within our walls, but extending outwards, into every relationship. In our quiet moments, I often thought back on how far we had come as a family. The laughter shared, the tears shed, and the vulnerability embraced allowed us to heal old wounds together, illuminating a pathway toward a brighter future. Now, we stood together not merely as a family, but as a resilient community, ever devoted to loving one another through all of life's challenges. The shadows we once feared no longer defined us. They had become part of our legacy, a guide that illuminated the path to acceptance and authenticity. Together, we forged ahead, ready to weave our stories into a rich tapestry of connection and support. In honoring our past while embracing our truths, we created a nurturing space where each of us could flourish in our own identities, forever transforming pain into a legacy of healing and love. The journey was far from over, but we faced it hand in hand, committed to moving forward together.